Hey, it's Juck.
Hey man, this guy's been about a business since he beer, and he's showing he's pretty damn good at football. A Jersey boy, newest member of BIA, Jalen
First and foremost, I like to thank God. Shout out BIA, shout out to Rushman for creating pressure. Go Bucks.
It's a burger. Tee-hee-hee, tee-hee-hee. You idiots. Let's get it. And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback. The truth is Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those. You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country. And welcome into Juck on Bucks on a Thursday. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. Appreciate you as always. No show yesterday, and I couldn't have done one if I wanted to because the tornado came rolling through Northeast Ohio, and this puppy was close. Sirens blaring, wife and the dogs came running downstairs, all five of them. Well, the one was straggling. I had to go up and get her. She's naughty. But it was close. Power was out for, 12 hours. It sucked. It sucked bad. But no damage to the house, some trees down, whole lot of cleanup. But we got through it because we're Iron Buckeyes. And there were some more Iron Buckeyes as we got the new list of the guys who made the Iron Buckeyes for the summer. Now, we talked about the guys who made it in the spring. There were three: Josh Frye, Sonny Styles, and IGB. And speaking of IGB, take a look at this. All right, so I got thoughts, man. Number one, the Ohio State media team is absolutely killing it. That was awesome. Number two, that is a guy who is frustrated. He is frustrated going against JJ all day, and who wouldn't be? But holding his own. He's a competitive dude. He is a competitive dude, and JJ looked like he was having a little fun with that battle too. So good stuff. But we got some new Iron Buckeyes, and let's go over it because we've got a couple repeat guys. Sonny Styles and Josh Frye repeated as Iron Buckeyes. Now, we know what Sonny's been doing, but Josh Frye, we've heard nothing but huge praise coming out of camp over and over again from all sorts of outlets, and now he's gone back-to-back with the Iron Buckeye. It was just 3 of them the first time. There's 10 of them this time, but big shout out to Frye and Sonny for getting that thing back-to-back. And they get this for the guys who are handling their business, making big-time personal gains, and holding the brotherhood responsible. So along with them, we got a pile of seniors. Donovan Jackson. Donovan Jackson also made Bruce Feldman's Freaks list. There's only 100. Donovan Jackson was on there. Lathan Ransom, Ty Hamilton, Travion Henderson, Cody Simon, one other. Hang on, I got to look this up. Emeka. Of course it was Emeka. And finally, one more guy, the guy who has packed on 20 pounds of muscle since that Missouri game where he didn't get to play because he rode the pine for making a poor decision or a couple of bad snaps in practice, whatever you choose to believe. Carson Hinsman. Shout out Carson. A lot of respect for that work ethic. Love that guy. And rooting for him and Tegra. Whoever wins that right guard job, I think we're going to have a really solid right guard and a backup. So good on him. Good on all 10 of those guys. That's awesome. The Buckeyes are starting practice number 7 right now. They're in action, which means that tomorrow we are just about a third of the way through the preseason. Today, full pads come on. Media is going to have access to watch it, and that'll mean Dillon Davis will report back to us. Dillon Davis, our buddy from the Delaware Gazette, covers the team, and I had a conversation with Dillon just before this right here, which I'll air at the end of this, end of my little, what do you call this? I don't know, my thing. End of my thing here. Tuesday and Wednesday, we got to hear from Chip Kelly, all 5 quarterbacks, Carlos Loughlin, all the running backs. And that means we're probably going to hear from, James Laurinaitis as well, and the linebackers. So we're probably going to hear from Tim Walton, Justin Frye, Brian Hartline, and those groups in the next couple of days. And I look forward to that stuff. I love hearing from the guys, man, especially the younger guys, because we don't ever get to hear from them during the season, like hardly ever. They actually got to talk to Aaron Julian too, which, Julian, I think that was the first time they ever got to talk to him. So Will Howard sat down and talked, obviously. And the topic of conversation with Will Howard gets weight under control in a bid to become OSU's starting quarterback. Weight under control? Come on, dude. Might as well call him Fatso, for crying out loud. So Will's down to 237, looks great. And apparently his weight's all under control. What the hell? And the new look Will Howard gave himself a little review so far. Thinks he's been real good at protecting the ball. Maybe too good. Like to see a little more risk taking in practice. Wants to be a little more accurate downfield and get a little more air under the ball. He also said there's some things giving him some more confidence, and he's realizing that a 50-50 ball is a good proposition when you're at Ohio State throwing to these guys, something that he never really had at Kansas State. One of the things we talked about ad nauseum in the debate about whether or not Will Howard was the right guy to bring to Ohio State. Whoops. This show's going swimmingly. The detractors would say that Will Howard's stats were very much like Kyle McCord's, and the defenders would say he's going to look much better when he gets this talent at Ohio State. And then the detractors would say, well, he was 70th out of 94 quarterbacks in passes of 20 yards down the field. And the supporters would say, well, he's going to be much better when he gets around this talent at Ohio State. And that's kind of how it went. I think there's a little bit of truth to both of those statements. I also think that Will Howard got some limitations, and I think he'll definitely have some games where he doesn't look so hot, and we want to pull our hair out because of some weird-looking balls. Like, it's just happening at practice. It's going to happen in the games. What the hell is that guy doing? We're going to have some of it. But sprinkled in are going to be some games where he looks fantastic, and I think it's important to be realistic about our expectations with him. But the theme of the day, if you were to take one theme away from listening to Chip Kelly and listening to Will Howard, was the quarterback running the ball. And I'm not just talking about taking off and scrambling. I mean, these guys are going to run. They talked about it nonstop. And I can't underscore what a philosophical change this is from the time when CJ Stroud was essentially directed to absolutely not take those 5 free yards if they were there. And the Ohio State fan base, a large portion, collectively losing their crap over that. And CJ Stroud coming out and saying, I'm not a running back. You guys remember all that? It was a huge point of contention. And as good as CJ Stroud was, he was never as good as he was against Georgia when the directive was, okay, tonight, do whatever it takes. And I'm not saying I disagree with that. You had to have the handcuffs on him to a certain extent. You had nobody behind him. But I am also a big believer that in this college game, you have to be able to let the quarterback run if you want to win championships. It's also why it's equally important to have a deep quarterback room. And, buddy, we got it. So you're going to get dinged up at some point in the season, and you got a guy like this.
The run game has been completely different. It's been incredible. And, when we got 2 running backs like Quinshawn and Travion, and then you got lots of quarterbacks that can run the ball, it makes it really hard on the defense. And so Coach Kelly really utilizes us and utilizes our running backs. So there's always an option for either of us to go.
An option for either of us to go. They're reading, they're handing it, or they're pulling it. And I love it. And I think that they are going to opt to pull it plenty. I was talking to Chris when he was on here with me. Will Howard cannot take advantage of that talent that he's got, those wide receivers, if he doesn't take the shots. And through the early stages of camp, he's not taking those chances enough. Definitely not as much as Devin. It's kind of understandable because he's coming into this, you probably think, is the guy in the driver's seat to win the quarterback competition. So the natural tendency is to probably not screw things up. Take care of the ball first and foremost, err on the side of caution. It's definitely understandable to have that mindset, but it's not acceptable. You got to go out there and win the job, and you got to be willing to pull the trigger when the time's right. And when you got a guy like JJ and a guy like Carnell Tate, you better let it fly when it's time. I think he's slowly coming around to that, and I think his comments alluded to that. But what Chris said beautifully when he was on here was, we recruit so that those 50-50 balls are 60-40 balls, or maybe even 70-30 balls. And I love that line. I'm stealing it. It's spot on. And we need more of that attitude. Throw the damn ball. And with that in mind, he talked about going against this defense and how much that's making him better. And when we heard Dillon Davis tell us last week that with this group of quarterbacks, when it's bad, it's really bad, we can also point to this defense and say, well, there are some people who think this may be a candidate to be one of the best secondaries in the history of the school. So that definitely factors into it a little bit. In Will Howard's original press conference, the first press conference with the transfers, when we heard the same day from Will, Quinshawn, Seth, Caleb, and Will Kazmarek, the next day was my first ever show. And I broke down that press conference. And to that point, what we'd seen of Will Howard, if you hadn't watched him much, were just some highlights. And a lot of those highlights are Will's running. Definitely the Texas run. You probably saw that. So naturally, we thought we're going to get a bit of a running quarterback here. And they brought this up in the original press conference. And in a roundabout way, if you remember that press conference, Bill O'Brien was the OC at the time. And Will, whether it was things that they had told him before, whether just watching Ryan Day's previous offenses, he was excited in that press conference not to have to run as much as he ran at Kansas State, which I found a little alarming because I had already looked up to that point how much he rushed at Kansas State, and it was only 4.3 carries a game. That's both called runs and scrambles. And if he wanted to be running less than that, that's very little running. Like 4.3 isn't really much. So I was a bit concerned as to what direction they were going. Well, his value as a quarterback, he's a good passer, but he's got some limitations. What adds to it is that run. That run game is borderline elite, not the same kind of twitchy elite rusher we're used to, but very effective, and he'll run you over. They don't want to tackle him twice. He's a tough dude. So however he got that impression that he wasn't going to be running that much, things changed when Chip came along. Definitely a strategic change in the offensive game plan. And then Ryan Day starts coming out and saying, we wanted a quarterback who can run. And what I like about this guy is that even though he came in maybe thinking one thing, things switched up on him. And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. He said, if it's 3rd and 5, I want the guys out there to know I'm going to get 6 and run somebody over. And I love that attitude. It fits in perfectly with the brotherhood, and I think that it shows that what he's willing to do. This guy is here to be all Buckeye and to win championships. And, he fits in great with these quarterbacks because we got some good ones. When you got a guy like him and a guy like Devin with those attitudes, I don't know what more you could ask for. He needs to get the ball to the playmakers, take the easy stuff, pick up first downs with his legs when they're there, take shots to the playmakers when it's time to do that, and facilitate. And that's what he said. I got to be myself and facilitate. And that's the perfect mindset. Another interesting tidbit from Chip. All 5 of these guys hit over 20 miles an hour. Will Howard hit 22.1 miles an hour. Now, when you look at this board, you see that Will Howard can keep up with some of the fastest guys on this team. That's deceptive speed to me. I mean, he looks fast. There's no doubt. But we heard Dillon say when he runs, like he's way faster than he thought he was. Maybe it's that long stride. I don't know. He doesn't look like he's moving that fast to me, but that is serious speed. Lincoln hit 21.9. Air hit 21, and both Devin and Julian both over 20 miles an hour. These dudes can all move. They asked Chip what's different about this time with him and Ryan, how they're handling things versus the last time they worked together. Chip said it's different because we got different personnel. We're adapting to the personnel, featuring what we do well, masking what we don't. And I think there are few better than Chip Kelly at that, in my opinion. He's just so good at it. Chip also said there's not much they don't do well. So that's good. About the offensive line, he said they got the makings of being a really good unit. He thinks the first thing he notices is the whole unit looks great. They did great work with Mick Marotti in the summertime. A big shift about Mick Marotti from the fan base. Mick Marotti was very revered during Urban's tenure. And then it kind of evolved. Like 2021, attitudes were really changing about him. He wouldn't evolve. His methods were too old school. He's doing bad with soft tissue injuries. I thought a lot of it was nonsense, but, some people had some decent points when you looked at what some schools were doing elsewhere. But things look great now, again, and things have kind of come full circle on Mick. And I guess if you stay anywhere long enough as a college coach, that's going to happen. It is particularly odd for a strength coach to be around quite so long. And I think they're still lucky to have him from the people I trust that are around the program. So good stuff there, but he's doing a good job with this offensive line. We've seen quite a few of them make huge improvements. Carson Hinsman, Josh Simmons, Josh Frye, double Iron Buckeye winner, the Armstrong twins, the freshmen, they look great since they got on campus. Ian Moore, the other freshman, looks great. We lucked out with the Armstrong twins so much in Ohio that last cycle. I'm really high on those two guys. I mean, they were 3-star guys out of St. Ed's. We're talking an Ohio high school powerhouse, 6'5" and 6'6", both over 300 pounds, 3-star guys. It makes no sense to me. It didn't fool the big boys. They had Georgia offers, Michigan offers, Florida offers. They were all in on them, but that was strange. Ian Moore and the Armstrong twins and Gabe Van Sickle in one class. That's a pretty good haul for our guy, Justin Frye. There's no headliner. No, he missed out on the big dogs, Brandon Baker, Jordan Seaton. But you don't always have to have a headliner. Those Armstrong twins could end up being just as good as any one of those guys. So could Ian Moore. And we'll talk about the headliners in the class of 2025 in a second here. All right, let's get into my conversation with Dillon. Dillon Davis from the Delaware Gazette joins us to talk about the last couple of days of practice and the press conferences with the fellas afterwards. Dillon Davis. So, Dillon, you got to see a lot of people in the last couple of days. I want to start with Tuesday when you talked to Chip Kelly, Will Howard, Devin Brown was talking. I know you missed him. You got to talk to Devin, Lincoln. You even got to talk to Julian. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's the first time you guys had Julian. But you've been in a room now and listened to a lot of different head coaches throughout your career. Chip Kelly's a legend, and I love hearing him talk. I don't know if it's his delivery, the straightforwardness, the way he explains things. Tell us about your conversation yesterday with Chip.
Well, I think the first thing that sticks out to me when we talked to Chip is a lot of what he said when he first came to Ohio State, and the reason that he wanted to come to Ohio State and take that opportunity is because he just wanted to get back to coaching ball. And so much when we talk to Chip, it's just about the ball aspect of it. And I think you can just really see that he's truly enjoying just being a ball coach again and coaching a position room with the quarterbacks and, trying to figure out how to, to win football games, nothing more, nothing less. So you can really, that resonates, when he talks. So the conversation itself was great. A lot of what you'd expect in terms of kind of downplaying, which guys are taking reps at and whatnot. A lot of the whole, don't count your reps, make your reps count thing, which obviously at this stage of camp, makes sense. One thing that I did, I thought interesting just in terms of the quarterback battle as a whole was that he made the comment that, maybe later this week that they would start to hone in on, where that's heading. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. We get to talk to Ryan Day, and I'm looking forward to whether I get to ask him or if somebody else asks before I get the chance to see, what the game plan is for when they plan on shrinking the field and on going to the one field. Because Chip made the comment that obviously when they go to one field, reps are going to have to get cut somewhere. That's going to be very telling in terms of what the pecking order of this quarterback battle is. So I'm looking forward to seeing when they anticipate doing that. I believe, and I'm not entirely sure, but traditionally this Saturday would be a scrimmage day for the team. It'd be a very big day in terms of how position battles ultimately go on to shake out. So I would be surprised if it happens before then, but I would, I'm kind of with the mindset that, maybe early next week or coming out of that scrimmage that, they might have a really good idea of who their starting quarterback is going to be. And then in that case, maybe they shrink the field. So, but the conversation was great with Chip. I think probably one of the bigger things that stood out, and I'm sure, made waves on Twitter and on social media was talking about Will Howard's speed. And I made that comment when we watched practice on Saturday and he had that run where he broke away and was pulling away from some guys, and Chip said that he ran 22 miles an hour this year, this summer at 240 pounds. It's he truly is faster than a lot of people think. And, at that size, it just kind of underscores again what my belief is that how can you not play this guy in that offense with knowing what they're going to want to do? It just seems like it's, he's tailor-made for how they're going to approach games. So, yeah. And then talking to Julian. No, you're fine. Just talking to Julian, you're right. It was the first time we've gotten to talk to Julian since he came to Ohio State. We typically don't get freshmen very early, certainly not in spring ball. And so it was nice that they made him available. Made Aaron Nolan available as well. And so that was nice. But talking to Julian again, I've made the comment that the kid just oozes confidence. He does not look like he's overwhelmed. He's very comfortable with where he's at right now. And talking to him in person, he just continues to ooze that confidence. And you can see it on the field. Another thing that Chip Kelly said that I thought was interesting and kind of just, plays into what I think I'm seeing from Julian right now is that, talking about accuracy and the zip, I've made the comment talking to people about Julian that the ball looks different coming out of his hand. And Chip made the comment that so much of those two things, accuracy and zip, and how the ball comes out of your hand is confidence. If you're not sure where you want to go with the ball, if you're thinking a whole lot pre-snap and whatnot, and you're hesitant, it's hard to throw the football the way you want to when all that's going on in your head and you're indecisive about where you want to go. You don't see that with Julian, and it just again underscores how confident he is. You can tell that he's confident, and those two things just prove that he knows where he's going to go with the football. That's not to say he doesn't make mistakes. Obviously, as a true freshman, he's going to make mistakes and still has a lot of growing to do. But you can see that he's decisive and confident with where he's going with football, which bodes well, whether that's anytime this year or certainly going into next year. So those are probably the two big things that I took away. I didn't really get to talk to Devin much. Again, for everybody listening, if they're not sure what happens with these interviews in the summer when you have multiple players, coaches going on, all those things, is that they have 3 tables set up on the indoor field, and players come and go as they're available. They're walking off the practice field, whether they just got down in the cold tub or whatever, and then as they're ready, they sit down. So you might have a situation where you have multiple guys going at once or 3 guys going at once, whatever. And as a one-man show for me, some of these other outlets, they have 2, 3, 4 guys where they can kind of spread it out and make sure everything's covered. For me, the one-man show, I try to be everywhere, but inevitably there's a guy talking, here that I want that, while there's another guy talking. So I didn't really get to talk to Devin a whole lot. Certainly wasn't by design. Right. In no way discounting his ability to still win this race, but just didn't get a chance to talk to him a whole lot. So,
yeah. I think maybe my first or second show, it was right after the transfers came in and did their initial press conferences. And one of the big takeaways I remember talking about it, was Will Howard kind of coming off as excited that he didn't have to run the ball as much as he did at Kansas State. And I went and looked it up when I did that show, and that was 4.3 carries a game. Now, listening to him and Chip talk yesterday, I would say just between the two of them, I think the overarching theme, if you were to ask me for one, I would have said it was quarterback run. They both talked about it extensively, multiple times. 4.3 carries a game. I think it's going to be more than that. I don't think this is a pick up the change scenario. They have now talked about this, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly. I think we're going to see more run than we were initially. I know they came out and said that. Then you had a lot of people saying, well, they're going to run the ball a lot. And then there was this counter no, they're just talking about pick up the change. I don't know, Dillon. I think we're going to see quite a bit more run than we had initially anticipated.
I totally agree with that. I think that'll be situational, of course. Do I think that Will Howard's going to run the ball 8-9 times against Akron or Western Michigan? No. Right. But I think in games where, as Ryan Day would call them, these matchup games where there's, the talent is equal or generally equal on both sides. And obviously that means that that's a big football game that you really need to go win. I think those are situations where you're going to see Will Howard. You're going to need to see Will Howard run the ball, and when I say run the ball, I mean designed runs, called runs, Will Howard runs, whether that be him keeping it in the read game or just flat out, quarterback powers and things like that. I think you're going to see it, more than 4.3. Is that what the number you said? 4.3. Yeah. More than that a game in games that they have to do it in those bigger football games, without a doubt. And Will Howard, not going to shy away from it. Probably one of my favorite things that was said all day between those quarterbacks was him talking about his, ability and willingness to run over people. Look, Will Howard, if he ultimately goes and wins this job for Ohio State, that's a guy who's going to put it on the line for Ohio State. If you take nothing else away from Will Howard, with his size and his speed, he's tough as well. He's going to put it on the line for Ohio State. That's just not that's not just lip service. He's willing to put it on the line, and you see that in his clips at Kansas State too. But if it's up to Will Howard and you want to run him 7 or 8 times a game, he's not going to shy away from that. He's willing to put it on the line. So yeah, I totally agree that Ohio State will need to use that more than 4.3 times a game at some point, and probably multiple points. And I understand with the length of the season, that's not going to be in games where they don't need to. They're not going to do it just to do it, because obviously there's going to be a lot of wear and tear with this extended season. But you'll see it more than that at some point, and probably several times.
Yeah, he said, I want the guys to know, if it's 3rd and 5, I'm going to get 6 and run over somebody, man. And I love it. I love it when I hear that. But that's part. Listen, we all know he has some limitations. He's not the most accurate guy. And if you're bringing him here and not taking advantage of those wheels, I mean, what's the point? So I was excited to hear that. I was excited to hear his attitude about it. It all sounded really good. And the fact that you've got a very capable backup, should he win the starting job as well, it all lines up really good. But very exciting to hear him talk about that. And Julian, I think you asked him straight out, you said about Chip said he's not like a normal freshman, and I can't remember his response, but definitely a confident dude. What was his response to that when you said that about Chip?
It was very, he didn't say a whole lot. It was just much, I'm just trying to take the meeting room to the practice field and just trying to learn and get better every day. All the things that you would expect, a true freshman to say. But in terms of Chip saying that, look, it's when I asked Chip about that after the spring game, which is when when I first got that quote, and then I asked him again yesterday, just about that, if he's still seeing that, because, this is his first camp in college football at any level. So, for all we knew, maybe it was, maybe it's wearing on him a little bit. Maybe, that wouldn't be an indictment on Julian saying that would be natural. But I asked Chip about it again yesterday, and Chip said, look, it's the same thing, that he doesn't get too high, he doesn't get too low. Just an advanced approach. That's the thing I keep on coming back to when I talk about Julian saying it's just an advanced approach for a kid of his age and his lack of experience. He's mature beyond his years, and that's what Chip was talking about yesterday and alluding to, is that he doesn't get high, too high if he makes a big throw, or he hasn't had these moments where he's feeling like he's a ride. But at the same time, if things don't go well, and inevitably they're not going to go well at some point, through your first camp, he doesn't get too low. It's just a very balanced, even keel approach, which is what you want from any quarterback. And Chip said as much as well. They preach that to all their quarterbacks. That's not a Julian saying. That's not a true freshman thing. He's preaching that to all their quarterbacks. Don't ride the roller coaster. Just good or bad. You would expect that from guys like Will Howard and Devin Brown, who have played, or at least been in a program, for a couple of years. But that you don't get that a lot from a true freshman quarterback. Usually they're just swimming and they're just treading water out there trying to survive. And in fairness, look, again, and it's not any knock on him, but that's what I've seen out of Aaron Nolan. That's normal.
Right.
It just underscores how advanced Julian is right now at this stage in his career. So there's a ton to be excited about the kid, for sure.
Bright future, man. Bright future. Chip was asked about the offensive line. He thinks that it has the makings of being a good unit. The first thing he said he noticed was what Mick did with them and what a great summer that they had. Josh Frye won the Iron Buckeye. One of just 3 guys, which is really great to hear. And we've heard a ton about his improvement. Seth McLaughlin, a really smart, experienced center. Donovan Jackson, I don't know if you saw it, made Bruce Feldman's freaks list.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah. He made the freaks list, which is really cool. But my confidence is just swelling every practice with what we're hearing about the offensive line. What are you noticing now? You've been to 4 practices now?
4 practices. We get back tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to seeing what we get to see tomorrow. But 4 practices. Look, we've talked about the offensive line before, and I think there's every reason to be bullish about them. It's kind of a weird dynamic because I think there's every reason to be confident in them, yet it's still the biggest question mark, in my opinion. The team has, and that again says a lot about how good the team is throughout the rest of the depth chart. But it's a weird dynamic, but I think there's every reason to be confident in them, just because I believe that whoever does play at right guard, all they need to do is be serviceable / pretty good. If you plug a pretty good piece in there at right guard with what else they have and how high I am on a lot of those other guys, it's a good offensive line. At worst, it's a good offensive line, and I think a good offensive line will take them a long, long way this year. Anything better than that, obviously, now you're really cooking. So, not a lot changed, or I haven't seen a whole lot of development since last week when we were at practices. But with the pads on now, get to see what happens tomorrow. If Saturday is indeed a scrimmage day, we'll again go a long way in determining how those races ultimately shake out. I still expect Carson Hinsman to be that right guard, with the caveat that look, somebody better step up at center, whether it's Josh Padilla or whether it's Luke Montgomery. Somebody better step up at center and prove that they can be a serviceable and ready backup. If you're going to put both of your top two centers on the field together,
Right.
it's a tough thing. You want to put your best 5 offensive linemen on the field, and in my opinion, that's Carson Hinsman playing a guard with Seth at center. But if you're going to do that, you better have somebody that, if one of those guys gets hurt, I should say either at center or guard, because, I guess if one of them gets hurt, they're going to slide down to center, and you better feel good about who's coming in at guard. Or vice versa, if you want to keep somebody at guard, and you better feel good about who's, coming in at center. So depth's still a concern there. But in terms of starting 5, you have every reason to be excited about him, without a doubt.
So James Laurinaitis, he said before that if Sonny Styles isn't a first-round pick, he's failed. And you got him and CJ competing for that spot at will. Obviously, he said that's a good problem to have, which sure it is. I think that he brings a different attitude than a lot of coaches when it comes to who's starting or who's not. He told us early in the spring, and he said it again Wednesday, whoever's making plays that week is going to play. Yep. And I feel like he's imparted his mentality when he played, which is he told us constantly looking over his shoulder, who they're recruiting, trying to recruit over him. And he just had that attitude all throughout his time at Ohio State and in the NFL. And I feel like this is his way of kind of making them take on that mentality. And I really like it. I like it a lot. I think it's going to keep him hungry throughout the year. CJ talked about his uncanny ability to blitz and get home. Whereas, if you tell him what he's got to do, like, he will do it so good. And maybe he's having not problems, but he's been a little slower to kind of read things on his own. Sounds like Sonny might be getting that a little bit faster. And it sounds like Sonny's probably going to end up being the one who starts this sucker off. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I totally agree with you about his approach. And I think that's a really fresh approach, where, so often at a place like Ohio State or these places where, it's a talent factory. We talk about guys getting buried down the depth chart all the time, and it's very easy. I mean, to say nothing about your, particular abilities as a player or your talent and whatnot, but there's just a guy better than you or a guy more ready to play, than you. And then, next thing you know, you're a sophomore, you're a junior, and you're still struggling to find a place or a role, and so I think it's a very refreshing, take inside that room, I'm sure, for guys to know that, look, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, if I'm, doing well in the meeting room and I'm taking that to the field and not making mistakes, and I'm showing that I'm reliable on the field, that like I'm going to have a chance to play and I'm going to have a chance to make an impact on this team this year. I'm sure that's probably, a very big deal inside that room for guys who were, you think about the Gabe Powers and the Arbo Reeses and guys like that. Look, we know that Cody Simon and Sonny and CJ, those guys are going to see the field in some capacity, and probably in a lot. But those guys behind them, it's what the ultimate incentive to keep on working. Those guys are going to play this year and play a significant, a number of snaps for them, and that's refreshing. In terms of CJ and Sonny, it's really interesting because both those guys are going to play this year, but they offer such different skill sets, right? I talked to Sonny today, and certainly no secret that, having been a safety for 2 years, just the level of knowledge that he has of the overall defense is going to be, so crucial for him, assuming that he ultimately starts there at the will. But then you have CJ being what James called the best blitzer in the room. So just another, another kind of skill set, another weapon. So how they ultimately find a way to get those guys on the field, whether it be at the same time or in just different packages and whatnot, they're both going to play. But it's very interesting. It's kind of mirrored what we've seen a lot in practice so far too. When we see CJ Hicks out there, a lot of times he's at the line of scrimmage and whatnot, playing downhill. And to your point, when he doesn't have to think, when he can just go, we know CJ Hicks is a remarkable athlete. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. And so, I'm sure that they're, cooking up a lot of ways to get that on the field and let him just go and just unleash him. But if you had to ask me every day or, every down who that guy would be, it's Sonny right now. And naturally so, because he probably has a wider skill set just because of his background than CJ does. But either way, we talked about it the other day, having those guys, just being able to do different things with them and just unlocks a whole nother level of what Jim can do defensively. And it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's really fun. But Cody, he loves Cody, man. He went on and on he just checks every box. Leader of the linebacker room, leader of the defense, it's everything. Gabe Powers, I said the other day, if Cody had gone to the NFL or he wasn't coming back this year, I would feel really confident, I think, with Gabe's progression, taking that rollover. Then he said Arvell is kind of playing a lot of Mike, and that surprised me. I didn't expect that. I kind of thought they were leaning towards him playing a little more Will, but it sounds like Arvell is going to be slotted behind Gabe this year.
Yeah, he's definitely getting some, time there at the mic. And just one thing about Arvell, for whatever it's worth, when they're waiting to sit down at the table, somebody might already be at the table, and a lot of times they're ready to do their speaking, and so they have to sit there. And I'm just sitting there listening to, I think it was Sonny, and Arvell standing behind him. And you want to talk about an impressive physical specimen in Arvell Reese. Just 1 year, heading into his second year in the program. The idea, if you give him another year next year, and you talk about the ideal linebacker body, like he is it. And we know he can run as well. So whatever that means, wouldn't be the first guy who physically, clearly looks like he can play at that level and play at a high level, but just for whatever reason, it doesn't click for him. But physically that guy is ready to play now. It's impressive to see. Certainly one of those, as they would say, one of the first guy out the bus kind of guys. So
I keep hearing that, bro. I keep hearing that about Arvell.
Yeah, it's tough when you're watching practice and then they're a little bit further away, and obviously everybody looks bigger in their pads and whatnot. But when he's just standing there with no shoulder pads on, just waiting there, and you're up close next to him, it's impressive. It really is impressive. So I'm really excited about him. Maybe if it's at the mic, if it's at the will, obviously, I think one of the things with Arvell is he has, just because of his athleticism, the ability to do whatever. So I think it's great if he's getting time at the mic. I think he would be a natural will, but I think he's getting time at the mic, just to kind of broaden what he can do. But he's going to see the field.
Okay.
If it's not this year, he'll be a huge part of it next year. I can't imagine.
I can't wait, dude. I want to see this dude out there. I really want to see him play. I mean, he's from up in my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And his high school stuff was elite as it gets. So I've been looking forward to this for a while. And now that but he wasn't that incredibly impressive physique wise in high school.
Yeah.
He looked like, they could really pack it on him when he gets down there, but now I guess it's all there.
Getting in the Mick dojo has done wonders for him, and will continue to. Again, if we're talking about down the road next year with a whole nother year, if he stays, committed to to developing his body, that's going to be really impressive. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a good physique, you got to talk to Coach Locke, man. This guy, he is a quote machine. I mean, just one to the next to the next. He's got them all. The dinosaur's dead. And they all got good hands. A whole lot of fun listening to him. He talked about the walk-on, Cisse, who a lot of people have been talking about.
Yeah.
So good for him. Love hearing that. He said Tony Johnson went and found him.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that him and Tony were working together so much. So that's good. I had almost forgotten that Tony joined the staff, but that's LJ's son, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. But we know what Quinshawn can do. We know what Travion can do. I'm more interested in the freshman. People's been looking great. Obviously, his high school film was fantastic, one of the best in that cycle, but it sounds like he's really getting it fast. Sam Williams-Dixon, I'm just going to be straight up. His high school film was not very impressive. I wasn't really looking for big things out of him coming in, but everybody's just raving about him, which I'm surprised. But what's your impression of him?
Yeah, I think I don't think it's unfair to say that when and again, it's relative to Ohio State's classes and how much talent there is. But if you start going through all those tape, I don't think that Sam Williams-Dixon's tape would be, up there among, some of the most impressive. But he's certainly, he's coming along. I don't think that, I think a lot of people were of the impression that, James Peoples would be that if either one of those guys were going to play and play early and play a lot, it would be James Peoples. I still would probably say that I would be of the mindset that that is the case. But Sam Williams-Dixon's right there. I don't think either one of those guys or James has, separated himself from him in that sense. And I think that they maybe, not to say that James can't catch the ball out of the backfield, but I think Sam does a little bit different, something a little bit different for you in terms of being able to be more dynamic in the passing game, which I think we kind of talked about that being a scat back thing when he was coming out of high school. So I think I don't want to say there's a path to playing time because I just don't know how that's ultimately going to shake out. Right. Hope is that Travion and Quinshon stay healthy and that there are very little carries to go, at least serious carries and not garbage time carries. There are very few to go around after those two guys. But, in the event that there's an injury, I don't know how that ultimately goes. I do know that they both are confident in their ability to step in and play right away. Something that stood out to me today and talking to them was that they're both confident kids. And Carlos Lachlan expressed confidence in them. Now, again, just to your point, Carlos Lachlan being who he is and being just a different dude, said, that he was confident in both those guys because he's confident in himself to coach them up, and so, which is fair, okay, that's fair. And one thing I've noticed from Carlos, right away, whether it was the first time we talked to him or today, was that, ultimately he always brings it back to him, not in a bad way, in the sense that, if those guys don't do what they're supposed to, if they're not ready to play, he'll own it because of the things he just said today, that ultimately it falls back on him. But he said he expressed confidence in them. They're confident kids. And I, even before hearing this, I still believed that Ohio State would be fine depth-wise at running back. I believe, one of those two guys, if not both of them, but certainly I believe at least one of them would be, serviceable behind, Quinshon and Travion. And I certainly believe that after today that between those two guys, they're going to be fine. Obviously the doomsday scenario of one or both of the, Quinshon and Travion getting hurt would be a brutal blow to the team, regardless if they're fine or not. Right. Those guys are difference makers. But in terms of depth and just being able to, take a little bit of the burden off of those two guys when necessary, Ohio State's going to be fine. Long term, we'll see what those guys do. But for the here and now, those guys will be, more than capable depth for the running back room.
Throughout these first, we're 5 or 6 in now. I keep forgetting 5 practices.
Yeah, so that's 7 today.
Oh, 7 today?
Or no, 6. I'm sorry, 6.
Okay.
4 last week, Monday off, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, 7 will be tomorrow.
So probably 3 of those 6. I'm always checking everything I can.
Yeah.
Jalen McClain's name has come up over and over again. Freshman safety, 3-star guy, one of these New Jersey dudes. These guys are criminally underrated, it seems, because every time they come in, they just blow up.
Yeah.
So this dude shed his black stripe today. Making a lot of waves. What's your takeaway on Jalen McClain?
I'd say after Saturday's practice, which would have been the third one, their third practice and the third one we got to see, I would have said after Saturday, if you would have taken a pool of the beat and said, hey, who's the first guy out of this class that's going to lose their black stripe, of the ones that still have to lose at this, this camp, he probably would have been at near the top or at the top. He would have been my vote for sure because he stood out through 3 practices, the first 3 that we got to see. They have some pretty good depth to safety. It's not great, but it's good. And he's certainly going to add to it. He just finds a way to make plays on the ball. He looks like another naturally competent kid. Doesn't look overwhelmed back there. And he's going against obviously some of the best receiver talent in the country. And he looks like he's a natural athlete out there. So just from what I've seen, confident and athletic, which is all you could ask for out of safety. You give me those 2 things at a young age like that, and then obviously coaching him up, that has the makings of a player. So not surprised that he lost his black stripe today because again, after Saturday, that would have been my guess for the next person to lose it. And I'm guessing probably if you pulled the beat, a lot of people would have said that as well.
Do you have a call for the next one? Let's get you on record here.
Oh man, now you are. I'm not ready to make that call yet.
Okay.
I have to think about that.
We'll double back on that next
Yeah,
week.
yeah. Get back to me on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't. I know you've been busy. You've been at practice, but I don't know if you saw the news or not. There's been a real travesty of justice. Jim Harbaugh has been given a suspension of a whole year over a cheeseburger. I don't know if you were aware of this or not. If you might have not seen the headlines,
Just a cheeseburger.
They gave him a year for a cheeseburger. I can't even believe it. But interesting stuff out of there. And I'm gonna just absolutely go on a tear here in about 10 minutes about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I appreciate you joining me, buddy. You're going to be back at practice again for Thursday. Full pads go on. And are they going to let you in for the scrimmage on Saturday?
Not sure yet. Sometimes that's like just a last moment kind of thing. Like, hey, if you want to come to practice on Saturday, you can. I'm hoping, but wouldn't be surprised if we don't. Wouldn't be surprised if we do. So we'll see. If not, you'll have to check some of these message boards that have all these insiders who apparently have an in with the program to find your news on that. So, but
got you. All right, buddy. Well, we'll have you on then sometime later on this week and rehash what you get to see from there.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate you.
All right, thanks, Dillon.
Thank you.
The NCAA has ruled on Burgergate, and it is still, in fact, not a cheeseburger. And whether you think it was serious or not, the NCAA shut down recruiting in the early stages of the pandemic. Nobody was allowed to recruit. They didn't know what to do. They shut it down. It was a dead period. And these guys are very familiar of what to do during a dead period. There are several in the recruiting calendar. You don't do anything. You don't recruit. You certainly don't have guys on campus. Now, Jim Harbaugh, the guy who just came out and said this on Monday.
Yeah, I do have a comment on that. Never lie, never cheat, never steal. I was raised with that lesson. I have raised my family on that lesson. I have preached that lesson to the teams that I've coached. No one's perfect. If you stumble, you apologize, and you make it right. Today, I do not apologize. I did not participate, was not aware, nor complicit in those said allegations. So for me, it's back to work and attacking with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
This is from the NCAA. During the investigation, Harbaugh denied meeting with the prospects initially. He said he had no recollection. In the subsequent interviews, he went further, unequivocally denying. Despite his denials, the weight of the factual information, including statements from the prospects themselves and their fathers, as well as documents, receipts, and expense reports, demonstrate that Harbaugh was physically present and engaged in those meetings.
Never lie, never cheat, never steal.
The document the NCAA released is 48 pages long. I thumbed through quite a few of them. I think the funniest part is they were up there investigating something else when they stumbled upon this. They were up there investigating non-coaches coaching. Michigan had self-reported that. They went to check it out, and somewhere along the line, somebody leaked to them that recruits had been up visiting during the COVID dead period. So they extended their investigation, started looking into that. A couple of beautiful quotes here. One from the director of recruiting. And the director of recruiting said, the football staff had no process in place to alert athletics compliance when prospects were planning to visit. The senior compliance administrator stated, the football staff alerted her to maybe 5 of these visits, and she acknowledged it was not an easy job to keep tabs when prospects were on campus. The recruiting director then stated, as a general matter of culture in the football program, it wasn't to be safe. The culture was to go to the line and cross it if you had to. That doesn't sound like Mr. Ethical right there. The recruiting director also provided an expense report and in a receipt showing that he paid for breakfast at a diner on February 28th, and the order included a bacon cheeseburger. And there's where we get the cheeseburger gate. The cute little name, the cute little violation that they laughed and they clowned about. It was so funny. It was so cute. This little funny violation, this classic example of NCAA overreach. That was the reason that Jim Harbaugh, if he wanted to, if he was still there, if he hadn't left, would be suspended for an entire year.
Never lie.
It's pretty clear that if Harbaugh was going to stay there, and Michigan knew this was going on, they wanted some assurances. He wanted some assurances too. He wanted to make sure that the athletic director, Ward Manuel, was not going to be the guy making the decision on his career. So he wanted Ward Manuel to be in a panel, a 3-person panel, to decide his fate should some kind of punishments come down. Now, Ward Manuel, this guy's been torn up by Michigan fans. They hate him. They can't stand him. They thought for a while that he was the reason Jim Harbaugh left. And it turns out Ward Manuel was right about all this. I mean, honestly, Ward Manuel looks like a superstar right now. He knew this was coming. Harbaugh got himself a year suspension in a 4-year show cause. He'd have had to be terminated. Ward Manuel saved them all this headache. Let the dude walk. Harbaugh walked because he knew damn well this was coming and it was serious. And they all laughed and clowned and giggled. Tee-hee-hee. It's a burger. Tee-hee-hee. Tee-hee-hee. You idiots. I mean, they're just such clowns, dude. Such clowns. They went on and on and on about this thing. And to be honest, I didn't think they were going to come down on him that hard. A year suspension. You know what it takes to get a year suspension out of that? I mean, it's just the pure arrogance of Harbaugh, the straight up dismissal of these idiots, because he doesn't have to follow the rules. He thinks you're stupid and your rules are stupid. He doesn't care. He won't even come to the hearing. Just straight up doesn't give a shit. Doesn't care. And it just embodies their entire program. It embodies them all. Their reaction to it, his reaction to it, all of it. Comeuppance. It's one of my favorite words, and they're all getting it, man. They're all getting it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I guess the worst part here is when I think back to Jim Tressel, man. Jim Tressel had a 7-game suspension to serve in the NFL when he went to work with the Colts as an analyst in the replay booth. Now, that's because of the punishment that he was given at Ohio State. He had to lose his job. By the way Ohio State handled that, properly. Tressel never publicly pissed and moaned about it. He took it like a man. He did wrong. He ended his career, didn't even whine about it. Took his punishment with the Colts, didn't whine about it. Didn't get on and grandstand like this. Because he's a real man. This dude's getting up and lying still. There is evidence contradicting what he just said Monday. And he knows it, but he still got up there and thought all he had to do was just keep on lying. His conscience is clear because he's a straight up narcissist. And you can have a clear conscience when you're a narcissist. It's straight up lie. So you can feel the contempt coming through this NCAA letter. And they say that the NCAA is unfairly coming after them, that there is just this gusto coming out of them, this vindictiveness coming out of the NCAA. Yeah, there is. That will happen when you appoint people in leadership positions who act like this. That'll happen. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I read the letter. There's clearly some vindictiveness coming through that letter. No doubt about it. And I guess all we got to look forward to is what comes next. Sherrone Moore already serving a punishment currently for Burgergate, being charged as a repeat offender. Harbaugh wasn't being charged as a repeat offender. Is Sherrone Moore going to make it through this? I mean, I imagine he'll cooperate further. He's not going to straight up thumb his nose at everything the NCAA has to say. But you've now got your second head coach in a row embroiled in a scandal. Deleted those text messages. That was the deceptive action. That's how he got it bumped up. Harbaugh got a show cause for 4 years and a 1-year suspension. And he wasn't a multi-time offender. Sherrone Moore is. He's a multi-time offender. And on top of that, the university is not just accused of being not cooperative. They're coming out with straight up, they are trying to thwart the investigation. Listen, you can't go around thwarting. If you thwart too much, they're going to come after you. I think their MAC level coach is in big trouble. I do. Now, I don't ever like to come out and predict what the NCAA is going to do because these guys are so unpredictable. It's just foolishness to try to act like you know what they're going to do. Even things that have precedent, they will come and just throw a random punishment off the wall. You never know. So trying to say, I know for a fact this or that's going to happen to Sherrone Moore, I don't know. I think there's probably a good chance that they're gauging the public reaction to this one, and they'll kind of use that. They're humans. That'll affect somewhat how they handle Sherrone Moore. And if Sherrone Moore, who I think is probably a little bit more of a normal guy than Harbaugh, probably understands the best thing to do here is to fully cooperate and not be a total jerk. Seems a little bit brighter than Harbaugh, maybe. Just normal. Harbaugh's just so strange. I think he'll cooperate much better. And based on that cooperation, they might go lighter on him. I mean, they're definitely going to go lighter than a 1-year suspension, right? And a 4-year show cause. They're not going to do all that, I don't think. That would be wild. Either way, man. Comeuppance. It's good stuff. I want to know where all you fools are that were talking about the Burger Gate. It's just a burger. Where you at? You know, they were all in my comments the other day when I was laughing about the letter, about the 52 text messages and Sherrone Moore admitting his involvement by erasing those. And yes, he was admitting it. No, it doesn't matter what was in those. He admitted it by erasing them. Because whether it was those 52 or the 52 prior, he knew he wanted out of his phone immediately. I got to clear this immediately. That's the admission of guilt. The whole point is he didn't, if it wasn't anything bad in those 52, that's even further incriminating. Don't you understand? If I got a girl at work and I'm talking to her just about work stuff, but I'm also talking to her about naughty stuff, right? And my wife wants to look at that phone and I delete the text messages real fast and she pulls them back up and sees, well, there's 20 messages here that I just pulled up. None of them say anything bad. I'm going, thank God it wasn't those 20, right? That's what Sherrone Moore had. Thank God it wasn't those 20. But the ones before he cleared it the last time, dude's guilty as hell. Dude's guilty as Harbaugh. They all knew. Everybody knew. They're all getting popped. This is funny, dude. This is funny stuff. They owe Jim Tressel an apology at the NFL. They owe him an apology. They're not going to do anything to Harbaugh. They're not. But they owe Jim Tressel an apology. Anyway, enjoy, guys. I am going to. Oh, I probably got some other updates. I get so sidetracked when I get to talking about this. What other updates do I got? Josh Petty. Josh Petty is apparently, there's some people really getting irritated if Justin Frye loses out a battle to Georgia Tech for Josh Petty. They're going to absolutely lose it. And as you know, I've been very critical of Justin Frye when it comes to recruiting. I think he's doing a fairly good job with the offensive line right now. But when it comes to recruiting, he deserves every bit of criticism he's gotten. But this, I'm not so sure. When we think about Georgia Tech and we think about Ohio State, if you got a guy who is contemplating between Georgia Tech and Ohio State, or Tennessee and Stanford, you've got two different things on this guy's mind. He either wants to go for the really big degree or the NFL football school. That's what he's weighing here. So no, Georgia Tech, obviously not a competitor to Ohio State for a normal recruit. This guy's not normal. The fact that Georgia Tech and Stanford were in his final five, I said it from the very beginning. He's deciding whether he wants to go to a football school or a smart school. If he chooses Georgia Tech, he's just choosing that he wants to go to a smart school. That's not Georgia Tech beating Ohio State for a recruit. That's just this guy's priorities. He wants that super diploma. Or he might have a specific thing he wants out of Georgia Tech. It is they got some really interesting programs there that they don't have anywhere else. It's a top level school at the Georgia Institute of Technology, and it's the local school for him. The Bulldogs aren't on him. Georgia didn't want him. So Georgia Tech is the local school. They're also offering some big time NIL there. They want to keep him in state. So if the Buckeyes should happen to lose, I don't think that's a big one we should freak out about. I mean, keep in mind, we weren't even really ever in on this thing. Like, this was just I kind of out of nowhere, like, really? This guy's interested? Okay, let's see where this goes. So let's not freak out about that one. And, we're getting David Sanders on the 17th. So what are we going to be upset about anyway? CJ Baxter, one of the best running backs in football, Texas running back, the guy that Nick Saban said was the best running back he saw all last year, had a knee blowout at practice on Tuesday, and he's out for the entire year. I think it was like MCL, PCL. Yeah, total nasty injury. So sucks for him. Dude's an awesome young running back, but he's just a sophomore, so he'll be back. As for Texas, he was going to split carries with Blue, and I think they got a pretty decent backup, so I'm not so sure how much of a blow it'll be for them. But a big blow for Baxter, rooting for that guy. Really good back. He's a good kid, too. One of the best backs coming out of high school in the cycle a couple years back. So, bad news there. What else? All right, let's get to some comments, shall we, folks? Hey, Juck, do me a favor and get that stinking Tennessee helmet away from my beloved Ducks helmet. Oregon and Ohio State have another thing in common. What's that? Tennessee is jealous of the success of both Ohio State and Oregon. See Sports Illustrated article of Caleb Henry. Tennessee reporter says, Oregon's strategy is to just go buy a class. Dan Lanning proves otherwise. Those Tennessee fans and Michigan fans are the worst. Washington fans have nothing on those two delusional fan bases. Man, you're right, buddy. I moved it for you. You can look back there. We had Oregon next to Tennessee. I've since put those stinking Gators next to them for you. All right? And you're right. Tennessee, one of the most delusional fan bases in the country. To me, they're number one, but my buddy Luke from the Tailgate tells me they're not as bad in real life. He thinks they're way worse on social media. I'll take his word for it a little bit because he lives down there with them in Nashville, and he's from Tennessee, Luke is. So he's sticking up for his bros, but he's a Tennessee Buckeye because his old man from up here in Ohio. So he grew up rooting for the scarlet and gray instead of the very odd colored orange, which I don't even know what color they call that. But what shade of orange is that? Texas is the burnt orange. Clemson is the very orange. What's Tennessee? The not so orange, creamsicle orange. I don't know. But, here's the other funny thing. So Luke, my buddy Luke, is the host of The Tailgate, a Power 5 podcast. I don't know if he's changed it yet to a Power 4 podcast. We talked about it months ago. I don't think he has yet. But he is having me on his show. And guess who he's having me on his show with? I got to pull this up.
North for Ohio State and Michigan. And you guys calling this that team out west, I think is so great because it's showing respect and showing an understanding for the rivalries of the Big Ten, but it's also kind of letting it be known that the Ducks are going to be a force in the Big Ten.
That guy. Luke's having me on his podcast with that guy. Now, I asked Luke, does he know that I clowned him on my show? Luke said, I didn't tell him. I'm going to have to tell him, right? Like, just clear the air. Like, buddy, listen, I clowned you on the show. I'll clown you to your face now, but I just want to let you know I did clown you on the show. And here's why. Now, I want you to listen to this before I go any further. We had a very nice, thoughtful response from one of our Duckeyes, and he wanted to tell me this. And because he was respectful, I'll be respectful back. All right, what's up, Juck? First off, love the pod. Really hope you see this before your next episode. Let's talk about that team out west, since you're one of the few Buckeyes who respects other people's opinions. Well, thank you. I try to. Please don't feed into what the podcaster's saying about trying to create new rivalries. Yes, the title is paying a little respect to OSU and Michigan's rivalry, but inserting ourselves as a rival was not the intention. If I'm wrong, then I agree it's cringe. Go watch the first episode of this series, and Lanning perfectly explains it. There's an existing narrative about the play style of West Coast, and Dan Lanning is saying that Oregon doesn't fit that narrative. Of all the teams coming from the West into the Big Ten, we'll be the ones most notable, and teams will know they have to play Oregon or Oregon is coming from them. Now, while I understand what you're saying, here's the thing. As you know, I am fair, and I've been very fair when it comes to Oregon, and even defended a lot of the garbage talking points about Oregon because I don't like it when people say garbage talking points and repeat them as fact about my team, like they're soft and things of this nature, or Ryan Day sucks when he's 56-8. Just ridiculous things. And I find it equally ridiculous when someone says Dan Lanning can't win a big game and he's been a head coach for 2 years. That's a ridiculous statement. Or when someone says Oregon has 0 national championships. Well, that's true. They didn't really embrace football like the rest of the nation who are football schools embraces football until Mike Bellotti. They just didn't. So if you really don't start your program till the 90s, then, you know, it's understandable. But I'll tell you what they have done. They've been to 2 national championship games, which is a lot more than Nebraska can say in the last 20 years, right? Yeah, we're over 20 now. I mean, Nebraska's a blue blood. So Oregon's done real nice for themselves since a program that kind of really started playing football in the 90s, like seriously. But I've defended Oregon plenty, a lot. And I defend other schools too when the talking point is garbage. And just as I blast Justin Frye, I'm sure you've heard me go off on him just recently, earlier in the show, I defended him in this particular situation going against Georgia Tech. I just try to take every situation and be fair about it. Now, that said, I'll tell you what I think about this team out west thing. I think it ties in exactly with the Duck in Indianapolis, right? And then the Duck mascot going to all the Big Ten stadiums. And this whole thing here, I think it's all one big tied together media plan to do a big media blitz for Oregon coming into the Big Ten. And I think it's nonsense and stupid because I think it's making a lot of people dislike Oregon. And I think it's making Dan Lanning in Oregon look like Dion when he sat there and did the whole thing in the locker room about Dion and the cliques. He's doing the same thing. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think it's soft. I hate it. And it's making me dislike him. And I formerly liked him. I don't like it anymore. So, you know, that's my stance on that. But I appreciate your opinion. Certainly respect it. And, you know, I'm over here railing. And by the way, I rail on my university, my team, when they do nonsense stuff too. I think the Lanning stuff, what they're doing at Oregon right now is nonsense. And I think that what Ross Bjork, our new athletic director, is doing right now is nonsense, floating the idea to sell out the name of Ohio Stadium in the most beautiful jersey in sports for a couple of bucks. And the next thing you know, you're going to get some idiot like this popping up saying he's renaming Ohio Stadium LL Cool J Stadium. This is Pitbull. Pitbull bought the naming rights to FIU. Florida IU. And he's going to rename that stadium Pitbull Stadium. Now, I'm sure Ohio State will be more selective. It won't be Pantene Ohio Stadium. It won't be LL Cool J Ohio Stadium. Am I out of the scene with rap? Is he not a thing anymore? I don't know. The point is, you don't need to do that when you're Ohio State. You can stay above it, and that's the ultimate flex. You don't need to, Ross. You just don't need to. And I think that's a travesty, and I'm not afraid to speak out against it. And if I was you, I would be telling Oregon to knock the nonsense off, and instead of talking about what they're going to do and what they're going to be as the team out west, different than the others, just come be about it and then talk. You know what I'm saying? That's just how I get down, bud. That's just how I get down. So, you know, I'm old school like that. I thought Dan Lanning was too, but apparently he's not. Kind of a shame, man. Really, it is. Anyway, guys, that's my show. I will miss you till tomorrow, but I will see you then. Have a good one. Juck and Bucks out.